The Chicago Blackhawks have made their first move ahead of the NHL trade deadline as Anthony Beauvillier has been dealt to the Predators. And on today's episode, I'll talk about why this was a good piece of business by Kyle Davidson right here on Locked On Blackhawks.
You're Locked On Blackhawks, your daily podcast on the Chicago Blackhawks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome on into another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Jack Bushman. You can give me a follow on X at JackBushman2, and make sure to also follow my Strictly Blackhawks account at Talkin' Hockey for all the latest Blackhawks news and updates. And just a quick reminder, if you're watching this on YouTube right now, please go and show some support real quick by smashing that like button, commenting down below, and subscribing for Celebrini. That all won't cost you anything and really does help me out tremendously as I'm starting to really try and grow the show. We're creeping into those summer months where I'm going to be diving into a lot of 2024 NHL draft prospects and what the Blackhawks could be doing this offseason, all the guys that are already in the Hawks prospect pool. It's going to be a fun summer, so make sure to go and show some support if you haven't done so already. But getting right into it, I did want to have this episode come out a little bit later than usual here, just because we didn't see the Blackhawks get involved in any sorts of trades early throughout the week as the NHL trade deadline is starting to creep towards us. But we did finally see their first domino fall earlier this morning. And I kind of had a feeling that was going to be the case, right? With deals just been flying off the shelves the last couple of days, still going on right now in the midst of me recording this. I'm kind of just hoping that the Blackhawks don't make any more moves until I'm done recording this episode, or heck, maybe even tomorrow morning. But their first piece of business that they got done ahead of the NHL trade deadline actually wasn't from one of the guys that I thought were most likely to get moved by Kyle Davidson. I've been talking all throughout this week and even into last week as well, how Colin Blackwell and Tyler Johnson, to me, were the two guys most likely to get moved by the Blackhawks before Friday afternoon. But nope, Anthony Beauvillier is officially the man on the move, as he was dealt to the Nashville Predators in exchange for a 2024 fifth-round pick. No salary retained, though, which I thought was a little bit interesting. When I previewed the trade deadline and all the Blackhawks options, I really figured that Beauvillier would at least have to get his salary cut in half. The Hawks would have to retain 50% in order for him to get moved. But now the Predators are taking on his full $4.15 million cap hit through the end of the season before he becomes an unrestricted free agent, and he is going to reunite with Barry Trotz, the man who was his head coach for a couple of seasons with the New York Islanders. He's now, of course, the general manager for the Nashville Predators, the place that he coached for a long time before his tenure on Long Island. But honestly, my initial reaction to this move by the Blackhawks was just a good piece of business. And thinking about what it cost to acquire Beauvillier a couple of months ago, it was exactly what they got back, a 2024 fifth-round pick. So nice that Davidson was able to recoup that with the Predators. And honestly, just at the time, it's not like Anthony Beauvillier was a real intriguing target based on what he was doing earlier this year with the Vancouver Canucks. No, it was just honestly a way for them to shed some salary cap. And I actually talked about Anthony Beauvillier a couple of different times during the offseason because I thought he would have been an intriguing cap dump option for the Blackhawks to take on. And then funny enough, they go and acquire him just a couple of days after Thanksgiving from the Canucks. But the Hawks just at that point in time really desperately needed a healthy body with just how many injuries they were going through the ringer at that point in time. And unfortunately, Anthony Beauvillier ended up getting hurt as well and missed a decent chunk of action, but stepped in nicely in his 23-game stint with the Blackhawks. 2 goals, 4 assists for 6 points. Nothing off the charts, but I did think it was interesting to hear Nick Foligno, the de facto captain for the Blackhawks, speak about how, Tito Bovey was only here for a little bit of time, but they felt like he made a good impact. he's a good dude, and like me, just wishing him the best in the next step of his NHL career. But I do think it's rather funny that only 23 games here in his tenure with the Hawks, he is absolutely going to go down as one of those social media Blackhawks legends that I like to bring up from time to time, such as Nick Seeler, who congratulations to Mr. Seeler for just getting a bag with the Philadelphia Flyers. I never thought that was going to happen in my wildest dreams. Matthias Janmark, another Blackhawks legend, Carl Soderberg, Madison Bowie, Jeff Glass. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. I'll refrain myself from just having this episode spiral out of control in that direction. But yeah, no real big reaction here to the Anthony Beauvillier trade. It's just a good piece of business by general manager Kyle Davidson to recoup that fifth round selection that it cost them to acquire Anthony Beauvillier in the first place. And now that they have retained that draft pick, the Blackhawks have 2 first round selections, 3 seconds, 2/3, 1/5, and 1/6 in the 2024 NHL draft. They're going to be making a lot of picks once again already and going to add to an already stacked prospect pool. Has to have you rather excited about the Chicago Blackhawks future. But another point I wanted to bring up, one kind of debate that I've been having as to how aggressive or just how involved the Blackhawks are going to be in this trade deadline. I had some concerns because of all the losing that they've been going through. And I mean, it's certainly not going to get better by trading guys like Tyler Johnson or Colin Blackwell or even an Anthony Beauvillier. But I do think the Hawks could kind of afford to have him out of the picture now that Andreas Athanasiou looks like he could be making his long-awaited return when the Hawks take on the Washington Capitals on Saturday afternoon. I'll get more into that in particular here in just a moment during segment 2. But with AA coming back, that, does mean the Blackhawks don't need Beauvillier as much as they did a month or two ago. Plus, one thing we have to consider is Frank Nazar and Landon Slaggert both could be joining the Blackhawks whenever their collegiate seasons come to an end. I'll actually have a full episode about that tomorrow, a little bit of a spoiler alert, but there is an opportunity for more forwards to be coming into the lineup, and that kind of made Anthony Beauvillier a little bit expendable here. So yeah, no real crazy reaction to this one. Just a good piece of business by the Blackhawks. A little surprised that the Predators didn't retain Beauvillier's salary, but they're only going to be taking him on for 22 games at this point in time. So a fine piece of business here by general manager Kyle Davidson. But the first domino for the Blackhawks has officially fallen ahead of the 2024 NHL trade deadline. We're just going to have to wait and see if either Colin Blackwell or Tyler Johnson will also be on the move either later tonight or early tomorrow morning. All right, coming up in just a moment here, Blackhawks fans, I'm going to talk a little bit more about Andreas Athanasiou nearing his return and Nikita Zaitsev possibly coming back in the next couple of games as well. But first, I need to talk to you all about Sleeper. And a new NHL season brings all sorts of possibilities. Connor Bedard could be on his way to winning the Calder Trophy for NHL Rookie of the Year. Austin Matthews looks like he's well on his way to winning the Rocket Richard Trophy and could be even potting 70 this year, which is absolutely bananas. And how about the Vancouver Canucks? They could be taking down the President's Trophy for the top team in the NHL this season, and you could be winning alongside them by playing daily fantasy hockey on Sleeper, the official daily fantasy app of the Locked On NHL Network. And Sleeper is our number one choice for daily fantasy sports and especially daily fantasy hockey, because with Sleeper, you get the opportunity to win 100 times your cash in daily fantasy contests. And it's so simple. All you have to do is select whether studs like Nathan McKinnon, Connor McDavid, or Connor Bedard will record more or less than their Sleeper projections for goals, assists, points, shots, and more in any given game. And again, Sleeper offers you the chance to win 100 times your cash. So start paying attention, make the correct picks, and you could be winning real big. And right now, you can also go and use the promo code LOCKEDONNHL in all caps to get up to an $100 match on your first deposit with Sleeper. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONNHL in all caps, and you can go and see Sleeper's terms of use right now for more details. I also need to talk to you about Robinhood. Robinhood has the only IRA that gives you a 3% boost on every dollar you contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. But get this, now through April 30th, Robinhood is even boosting every single dollar you transfer in from other retirement accounts with a 3% match. That's right, no cap on the 3% match. And Robinhood Gold gets you the most for your retirement thanks to their IRA with that 3% match. And this current offer is good through April 30th. So go and get started at robinhood.com/boost right now. Again, this offer is good through April 30th. Subscription fees apply. And now for some legal info. Claim as of Q1 2024 validated by Radius Global Market Research. Investing involves risk, including loss. Limitations apply to IRAs and 401ks. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold for 1 year from the date of first 3% match and must keep Robinhood IRA for 5 years. The 3% matching on transfers is subject to specific terms and conditions. Robinhood IRA is available to U.S. customers in good standing. Robinhood Financial LLC is a registered broker-dealer. Segment 2, like I mentioned before the break, not only could the Blackhawks be getting Andreas Athanasiou, a.k.a. Grease Lightning, we haven't seen him in a while. Not only could they be getting him back on Saturday when they take on the Washington Capitals in the nation's capital, but they also could be getting back defenseman Nikita Zaitsev as well, as both guys were on the ice for the Blackhawks during practice this morning, and they both have shed that green non-contact sweater and were full participants. And after the session, we heard some more confirmation from Luke Richardson saying that Athanasiou is likely to play on Saturday, while Zaitsev could be coming back too. It sounds like he's a little bit more up in the air at this point. But if I had to guess, if not Saturday against the Capitals, then on Sunday in the back half of the back-to-back when the Blackhawks take on the Arizona Coyotes. But yeah, just nice to see AA be so close, man. It's crazy to think that he's only played in 11 games for the Blackhawks this season, hasn't played since November 9th against the Tampa Bay Lightning, which is also crazy to think that the Blackhawks just picked up their first road win since that game a couple of days ago. That's how long it's been since Andreas Athanasiou was played, and that's how long it had been since the Blackhawks had won on the road. But just a nagging groin injury, and it looked like throughout the 3+, how long is that now? Don't make fun of me for my math here. Is that 4 months? Yeah, basically 4 months now at this point. Saturday night will actually be 4 months on the dot. 4-month absence for Athanasiou. Crazy. But throughout those 4 months, it was weird, right? Because we got some positive updates. We heard that he was going to be skating soon. He had been back in the gym. Unfortunately, there was a little bit of a setback there, I guess. He had to go and seek a second opinion for some medical advice and such. But now looks like he's gearing up for his return. And the Blackhawks could certainly use his speed and offensive abilities in their forward group. Just not a whole lot of that speed up front for the Blackhawks, and that's the name of the game for Andreas Athanasiou. Sometimes he's even skating a little bit too fast for his hands, but he creates a lot of good scoring opportunities. Never been a very strong defensive player, but that's not really what he's known for. It's creating on the offensive end, scoring goals, generating breakaway opportunities. I'm excited to get a player with the polarizing skill set that Andreas Athanasiou has back in the Blackhawks lineup, hopefully on Saturday when they take on the Capitals. But for Nikita Zaitsev, it's been a little bit for him as well. He hasn't played since January 16th when the Blackhawks defeated the San Jose Sharks 2-1 in a barn burner of a game. And the Blackhawks have to take on the San Jose Sharks 2 more times here in this month. And those are actually some pretty meaningful matchups for the Slacken for Macklin sweepstakes. So wouldn't be too upset if the Blackhawks end up dropping both of those games to San Jose. But on the real note, Nikita Zaitsev, man, I've given him a ton of flack here on the show, particularly last season when he first signed on with the Blackhawks. Throughout the preseason, he didn't look good. Early on this year, he didn't look good either, was doing his typical traffic cone type of stuff on the back end. But in his final probably 10, 15 games or so before suffering that injury, he had actually been playing some pretty solid hockey, believe it or not, and had been contributing offensively for the Blackhawks, which is much needed. We, have been begging for that all season long, and Seth Jones hasn't really been there in the goal scoring. Zaitsev only has 2 goals in 26 games, but added 5 assists and just had a couple of really solid performances. And considering how ugly things have been for the Blackhawks third pairing, I didn't think I'd ever be saying this, but I am oddly excited to get Nikita Zaitsev back in the lineup. But with both of these guys participating in line rushes during practice this morning, it was also nice to get a little bit of an idea of what the lineup could look like if they both are able to return against the Capitals. Starting with the Blackhawks forward group, Nick Foligno, Connor Bedard, Philip Kurashev. No surprise, that's the top line. They tinkered with Nick Foligno down in the lineup for a little bit, but his chemistry with Bedard is just so noticeable. They just mesh really well together. I think it only makes sense to have Foligno back on that top line, but I would like to see Andreas Athanasiou probably up there at some point as well. Luke Richardson elected to keep the Blackwell, Dickinson, and Anderson trio together as the second line. No complaints out of me on that one. They're an effective, hard-working group in the offensive zone, and also the shutdown line for Luke Richardson. He always puts them out against the opponent's most dangerous trio. So a lot of respect for what those guys have done, and plus minus isn't a very meaningful stat in hockey, but if you go and look at those guys plus minus compared to the rest of the Blackhawks, it's rather impressive. So no issues keeping them together. Andreas Athanasiou jumps right into the line rushes and takes Anthony Beauvillier's spot, unfortunately. Wishing you all the best, Tito Bovi, in your stint in Nashville. Hopefully playing under a Barry Trotz style, even though he's the general manager now, will kind of wake up his game a little bit, particularly in the goal-scoring ability. But Andreas Athanasiou playing on the left wing of the Blackhawks third line, along with Tyler Johnson and Taylor Radish. And then Ryan Donato, Zach Sanford, and Mackenzie Entwistle served as the fourth forward line, while Reese Johnson was the odd man out. And then on defense, Alex Vlasic and Seth Jones, the top pairing for the Blackhawks. Don't see that being tinkered with the rest of the way. Kevin Korchinski and Jacob Megna, they've been a duo together now for, 25, 30 games at this point, really ever since Megna got acquired from the Seattle Kraken. And then to round things out, Jared Tenorti and Nikita Zaitsev back on the right-hand side as the third defensive pairing. Really curious as to what's going to happen, though, whenever Zaitsev is able to come back. I'm going to guess Louis Crevier is probably the one who's going to go back to Rockford to help settle things down there defensively before they gear up for the Calder Cup playoffs. But I would imagine Isaac Phillips is probably kept around as the seventh defenseman. He'll probably bounce back and forth with Jared Tenorti, who just has not been very good either. I would like to see Isaac Phillips get some reps with Nikita Zaitsev because it's been a little bit of a tough stretch for him, but no other option for Luke Richardson but to keep him up and kind of keep rotating him in with Crevier and Tenorti on that third pairing because there just aren't any other options. So I would like to see what Phillips has to offer with maybe a little bit more of a natural defensive partner, someone who can, it's Nikita Zaitsev, and I've talked a lot of crap about him. Now I'm kind of like backtracking on everything I've ever said against Zaitsev. I was about to call him like a little bit more of a reliable defensive partner. I guess he probably is compared to Jared Tenorti. I don't know. It's not ideal regardless. Hopefully Zaitsev will just do good things offensively. But I am interested to see how Isaac Phillips is going to look in these final 19 games of the regular season. But hopefully we'll get both of those guys back. It's been really tough with injuries for the Blackhawks all season long. Would love to see those guys in there on Saturday. And I also wanted to bring this up to all of you fans out there. Got some good news on the Taylor Hall front. Sounds like he's on the verge of skating again, Blackhawks fans. And man, it's almost like it's easy to forget that Taylor Hall is still a member of the Blackhawks. He's only played in 10 games for them this season. Hasn't played since November 16th, I want to say, against the Buffalo Sabres. And he is still going to be out for the remainder of the season with that torn ACL, which, again, just such a shame because I really wanted to see what he had to offer along with Connor Bedard on the Blackhawks top line. He's not going to be coming back for game action this year, like I said, but I think this is definitely positive news that he's progressing well. And also, this makes it seem like he's going to be able to have a full summer to recover and prepare and train to gear up for the start of next season. Don't forget, Blackhawks fans, Taylor Hall is still signed on through the end of next season as well. So I hope his recovery up to this point has gone as well as possible, and would be rather nice to see him back on the ice here sometime soon, getting ahead of things before he probably hits it hard this summer. All right, coming up in just a moment here, Blackhawks fans, before I wrap things up, I still have to discuss Boris Katchouk being reassigned to the Rockford IceHogs earlier this morning. But first, I need to talk to you all about Indeed. No matter how the last game went, anytime you take the field, you've got a shot at greatness. Go and give your team the best shot at winning by recruiting more MVPs with Indeed. When you're hiring, you need Indeed, because Indeed is the only job site where you're guaranteed to find quality applications that meet your must-have requirements, or else you don't pay. So instead of spending multiple hours on a plethora of different job sites, hoping to find candidates with the right skills, you need to get you one powerful hiring partner that can help you do it all, and that is Indeed. Indeed streamlines the hiring process with powerful tools that find you match candidates in an instant. And I personally love Indeed because it is truly the only job site where you pay for applications that only meet your must-have requirements. And Indeed knows that when you're growing your business, you got to go and make every dollar count. And according to ComScore, Indeed is the #1 job site worldwide, and Indeed delivers 4 times more hires than all other job sites combined, according to Talent Nest. So start hiring right now, and you'll get a $75 sponsored job credit to upgrade your post at Indeed.com/lockdown. That offer is valid through March 31st. So before the end of this month, go to Indeed.com/lockdown to claim your $75 credit before March 31st. Again, that's Indeed.com/lockdown. Terms and conditions apply. You need to hire? Then you need Indeed. Back here on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. If you're still tuned into this point of today's episode, just want to say thank you very much. I really appreciate all of your support. And if you haven't done so already, do me a quick favor. Go and hit that like button, comment down below, and subscribe to the Locked On Blackhawks YouTube channel. All that does really help me out as I'm trying to grow this show, getting into the summer. And also, make sure to go and check out the new Locked On Sports Today, because Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. And Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. So go check out Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. Segment 3. Still not sure exactly if this was a paper transaction for him to be eligible to play for the Rockford IceHogs during the Calder Cup playoffs, which looks pretty likely that they're going to qualify for that. Would, though, like to see them continue to fight and climb up those Central Division standings a little bit with 20 games left on the schedule. But Boris Katchouk, someone I've been a little bit outspoken on personally this season, was reassigned to the Rockford IceHogs earlier this morning after being a healthy scratch a couple of times in the last handful of games. And look, I know Boris isn't some kind of game changer or anything, but to me, he just deserves to be in the lineup over some other guys who are in there in the bottom 6. Like, he actually makes his presence felt when he's rolling right. He gets a lot of breakaway opportunities. He has some good speed. He's done some good work on the Blackhawks penalty kill, which has been much better over the last couple of months. But it feels like he and head coach Luke Richardson, for whatever reason, have just butted heads, don't see eye to eye. I know Richardson mentioned an attitude problem not all that long ago. And look, if that is the case, Boris, what are you doing, buddy? You're not doing yourself any favors. But from what we've seen from him in those 38 games, and again, I caught some flack for mentioning this on social media not that long ago. Boris Katchouk should be playing, in my opinion, night in and night out. And there are some people out there saying, oh, it's Boris Katchouk. Are you really making... I'm not making a big deal about Boris Katchouk. I talk about the Blackhawks day in and day out. I'm allowed to have opinions on things. And I understand, again, but it's not like I'm saying Boris Katchouk is like a third-line piece of the future for the Blackhawks. All I'm saying is, out of the fourth-line guys, Reese Johnson, Mackenzie Entwistle, hell, Zach Sanford, Boris Katchouk should be in there over them every day, in my opinion. And he just actually makes an impact. And I know it's not on a nightly basis. Consistency is the problem, and that's why he is a fourth liner in the NHL. After being a second-round pick, I understand these things, but I still feel like he has much more to offer than some of the other guys who are consistently getting opportunities. That's just the way I feel about it. I hope this was a paper transaction because I really do think since he got recalled from Rockford last time, which that was a decision I didn't agree with at the time, but after he got recalled from Rockford after just a few games down there with the Payes, he really had that spark again, and it looked like it was a little bit of a wake-up call for him, maybe a little bit of a slap in the face, a hard look in the mirror that, hey, we got to go and do more out here, big dog. And he was a man on a mission there for a little bit. That game against the New York Islanders and the Blackhawks won back in January. And again, I get they're few and far between, but at least he has something to offer down there. And looking at the numbers, I just think he's been a more effective player. Maybe he's not necessarily what Luke Richardson is looking for in his fourth line, but I don't know. To me, I'd be playing Boris Katchouk. He's played in 38 of the Blackhawks. 63 games this season because he got 19 left on the schedule. He's played in 38 of 63 games. 5 goals, 4 assists for 9 points. Again, I know he's not lighting the world on fire, but still in an 82-game season, if you put his numbers on pace for 82, it's a guy who can score 10 goals, maybe give you 20 points with not a lot of help down there on the fourth line. Those are semi-notable numbers, especially for what the Blackhawks offense has been doing this season. And I've always been a Mackenzie Entwistle fan, and I know his parents tune into the show. I'm not trying to rag on him or anything, but when you look at Mackenzie Entwistle, who's played in 53 games this year, and I know offense isn't his bread and butter, but he's only got 6 points. He's a minus 28. Again, I know plus minus isn't the most meaningful stat, but you look at Boris in 38 games, he's only a minus 2. Reese Johnson, he's played in 39 games this year, 4 points. I know offense isn't his mantra either. Minus 21. These guys are still basically playing in the same opportunities. Boris Katchouk has mostly been a fourth liner this year. His numbers are more noteworthy than either Mackenzie Entwistle or Reese Johnson. And don't even get me started on Zach Sanford. He was like a diet Tito Bovey of a guy that we need in the lineup just to be healthy. So yeah, I just disagree with this one. And it's okay for me to disagree with stuff Luke Richardson does. I don't always see eye to eye with how he handles some things. I don't always agree with some of his lineup decisions. And maybe I am splitting hairs a little bit talking about Boris Katchouk, a guy who's a fourth liner that probably isn't going to really matter in the future. I still feel like he should be in there. So that's my 2 cents. That's my story. I'm sticking with it, as Steve Kerr said. But go and hit the comment section down below. Whether you care or not, go and let me know your thoughts on Boris Katchouk kind of being the odd man out in the bottom 6. And I will say, if he has attitude problems, if he's not meshing well with his teammates, doesn't have a good vibe in the locker room, then I understand it. But if those things are being blown out of proportion a little bit, I just feel like Boris Katchouk has more to offer than anyone we've seen on the Blackhawks fourth line this entire season. All right, that is going to wrap up today's episode of Locked On Blackhawks. As always, thank you all again for tuning into the show. Make sure to go and follow Locked On Blackhawks for free right now, wherever you may be listening to your podcast, and to go and subscribe for Celebrini. Go and subscribe to the Locked On Blackhawks YouTube channel, and that way you can get the latest episode as soon as it becomes available each and every day. As always, I'm your host, Jack Bushman. Go and give me a follow on X at Jack Bushman2, and make sure to follow my Strictly Blackhawks account as well at Talkin' Hockey for all the latest Blackhawks news and updates. So until tomorrow's episode, everyone, stay tuned. It's going to be a fun one as I'll be talking about Landon Slaggert, Frank Nazar, possibly joining on with the Blackhawks once their collegiate seasons come to an end. Stay tuned for that. Until then, everyone enjoy the rest of your day. I'll see you next time on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.